Restlessness is often seen as a flaw, a weakness, or even a problem to be solved. People who cannot sit still, who find themselves bouncing from one thought to another, or who constantly feel like they are running out of time are usually labeled as anxious, distracted, or unfocused. Yet if we step back and look deeper, restlessness is not a deficiency at all. It is energy misunderstood. It is the fire of untapped potential searching for a direction to burn. When someone feels restless, it is not because they are broken, but because something within them refuses to be silent. Something inside is demanding growth, change, and movement. And the only mistake is believing that this energy should be suppressed rather than understood. The restless mind carries within it a tension, an inner dialogue that never quite turns off. One moment it is dreaming of possibilities. The next it is questioning the status quo, and then it is imagining what more could be done. On the surface, this looks like distraction. It can feel overwhelming, even exhausting. But history shows that the restless are the very people who move the world forward. Thinkers, innovators, artists, leaders, all of them shared a common trait, the inability to simply accept things as they were. Their minds would not let them rest in complacency. That spark, often misunderstood as a burden, became the very force that unlocked greatness. To misunderstand restlessness is to miss its gift. Anxiety and distraction are only labels that describe the surface-level noise. Beneath that noise is drive, beneath the drive is vision, and beneath the vision is a desire for impact. The restless mind is not content with mediocrity, because it knows, whether unconsciously, that more is possible. It searches for pathways, it tests boundaries, it explores uncharted territories. In truth, restlessness is curiosity in motion, and curiosity has always been the foundation of discovery. Restlessness also carries with it an urgency that pushes people to act. While a calm mind may be comfortable with routine, the restless mind rebels against stagnation. It resists the comfort zone, not because it wants chaos, but because it senses that life is too short to remain still. This urgency can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is not the enemy. Discomfort is a compass. It points toward what needs attention, what needs to change, and what is waiting to be born. If we listen to restlessness not as a critic but as a guide, it shows us the next step forward. However, without direction, restlessness can eat away at a person. When energy has no channel, it turns inward, manifesting as stress, frustration, or self-doubt. The real challenge is not to eliminate restlessness, to give it a worthy outlet. Focus is not the absence of restlessness, but its channeling. When energy is pointed toward a purpose, whether a project, a cause, or a vision, restlessness transforms into momentum. What once felt like a scattered storm becomes a powerful current, capable of moving mountains. The restless person who finds clarity becomes unstoppable, because their energy is no longer wasted on worry, but invested in creation. Greatness has never come from stillness alone. It comes from tension, from movement, from a refusal to settle. Every breakthrough in history began as a restless thought. What if things could be different? What if there was a better way? What if I could push beyond what exists today? These questions are born from unease, from that inner fire that refuses to let things remain as they are. Restlessness, then, is not a curse. It is a call to create, to innovate, to step forward into the unknown with the energy that others might mislabel, but that the visionary understands as fuel for the journey. Questions have always been the engines of human progress. Every advancement we enjoy today, from the simplest tool to the most complex technology, began with someone asking a question. A restless mind does not accept things at face value. It does not settle for the way things are. It asks why, it doubts what seems obvious, and it challenges what others consider permanent. The restless mind is not obsessed with finding all the answers. It is obsessed with asking the right questions. Innovation, after all, is born not from certainty, but from curiosity. When a child asks why the sky is blue or why the sun sets, it is not because they expect a scientific lecture. It is because their mind is restless, unwilling to take the world as it appears. That same spirit lives in every innovator and every leader who has ever shaped history. They refuse to accept the narrative that something is impossible. Instead, they ask, what if it could be done? What if we could make it simpler, faster, fairer, better? These questions are often dismissed by those who prefer comfort over change, but to the restless mind, they are sparks. And sparks, when nurtured, ignite revolutions. The restless mind thrives in uncertainty. Where others crave answers that bring closure, the restless thrive in the tension of the unknown. They are not afraid to leave a question hanging in the air, because they know that discovery lives in that space between curiosity and resolution. Answers may give us stability, but questions give us movement. Progress is never born from someone saying, this is the way it has always been. Progress comes when someone asks, why must it be this way? There is a powerful relationship between doubt and growth. Doubt is not the absence of belief, it is the presence of inquiry. The restless mind doubts not because it is weak, but because it refuses to settle for shallow explanations. Doubt pushes it to dig deeper, to test, to experiment, to explore. Every scientific breakthrough was preceded by doubt. Every artistic masterpiece was preceded by the question, is there another way to express this truth? Every social change was preceded by the restless challenge, must we continue to live like this? Without doubt, there would be no evolution of thought, no reimagining of systems, no daring to improve what others had accepted, yet questions without courage lead nowhere. It is not enough to ask. One must act on the questions asked. The restless mind, when coupled with bravery, becomes a force of transformation. It is easy to silence questions for the sake of comfort or tradition. But when a person allows their restlessness to give voice to those questions and then pursues the answers with persistence, they unlock innovation that benefits not only themselves but society at large. The world changes not because someone had an answer, but because someone had the courage to keep asking when others had already given up. The danger lies in mistaking restlessness for aimlessness. A restless mind without purpose may circle endlessly, chasing questions without end. But when aligned with vision, restlessness becomes a catalyst. Each question builds upon the last, leading to insights that would have remained invisible without that relentless inquiry. It is this chain of questioning that creates breakthroughs. The light bulb was not the result of a single answer, but of countless questions tested over and over again. The same is true for every meaningful advancement. Questions were asked until the world shifted. Answers create stability, but they also create finality. Questions, on the other hand, are infinite. They push boundaries, they expand horizons, they keep us moving forward. A restless mind that keeps asking, doubting, and challenging is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be cherished. Because it is in those very questions, uncomfortable, persistent, and daring, that the seeds of progress are planted, and from those seeds, greatness eventually grows. Discomfort has a way of making people uneasy. It unsettles the mind, disrupts routine, and forces attention to places we would rather avoid. Most of us are conditioned to treat discomfort as something negative, something to escape as quickly as possible. But discomfort, when understood, is not a punishment. It is a compass. It is the restless signal that there is more to explore, more to build, more to become. What feels like agitation or unease is often the mind's way of pointing toward growth, inviting us to step into territory we have not yet claimed. The human instinct is to gravitate toward comfort. Familiar patterns and predictable routines feel safe because they protect us from risk. But growth has never been born out of comfort. Growth is the byproduct of tension, of challenge, of stepping into what feels foreign. The restless state is not a sign of weakness. It is evidence that the current situation no longer aligns with the potential inside. Discomfort whispers that there is another level waiting. It is the internal nudge that says, this is not enough. You were meant for more. When listened to, discomfort becomes a guide that prevents us from settling for less than what we are capable of. Consider how muscles grow stronger. They must first be torn, stressed, and pushed beyond their current capacity. The soreness that follows a workout is discomfort, but it is also proof of progress. In the same way, the restless discomfort of the mind signals expansion. It is the intellectual and emotional equivalent of stretching beyond what feels easy. Those who run from this feeling remain stagnant, while those who lean into it discover new strengths. Every breakthrough in human achievement, scientific, artistic, or personal, was preceded by discomfort. Someone had to step into the unknown, risk failure, and endure unease in order to build what did not yet exist. Discomfort also exposes the areas we have ignored. A restless feeling in a job might be the compass pointing toward work that feels meaningful. Discomfort in a relationship may be the signal that boundaries or deeper honesty are needed. A gnawing sense of dissatisfaction in life often precedes the realization that purpose has been neglected. Instead of silencing these signals with distractions or avoidance, listening to them reveals direction. The discomfort is not the destination. It is the pointer. It is less about where we are and more about where we need to go. The paradox of discomfort is that while it feels like agitation, it is actually alignment. It tells us that the life we are living and the life we are meant to live are not yet the same. That gap between reality and potential creates restlessness. Some choose to numb it, while others choose to chase it. Those who chase it discover that discomfort, rather than being the enemy, becomes a partner in transformation. It keeps pushing until movement happens. It refuses to let the soul remain confined in places it no longer belongs. Discomfort is also a filter. It separates those who cling to what is easy from those who are willing to pursue what is meaningful. The road to mastery, leadership, or greatness is not paved with comfort. It is paved with difficult questions, long nights, setbacks, and moments of doubt. The restless energy of discomfort is the very fuel that carries someone through those challenges. Without it, complacency wins. With it, the possibility of becoming more is never out of reach. The restless mind that learns to interpret discomfort as a compass never fears unease. It follows it, knowing that on the other side lies growth, discovery, and a life closer to its fullest potential. Focus is often misunderstood as stillness, as the absence of noise, or as the quieting of every restless thought. People imagine that in order to achieve focus, one must eliminate distraction and silence the inner turbulence. But the truth is different. Focus is not the absence of restlessness. It is its channeling. Greatness does not come from suppressing the restless energy within, but from giving it purpose, direction, and clarity. The restless mind is not broken, it is abundant with energy. When that energy is guided instead of stifled, it becomes the driving force behind extraordinary achievements. Restlessness by itself can feel chaotic. It bounces from idea to idea, dream to dream, without ever settling. This is why so many people misinterpret it as weakness, calling it distraction, impatience, or instability. But when a restless mind discovers of why, worth pursuing, that same chaos sharpens into vision. Energy that once felt scattered begins to flow in a single direction. Focus emerges not by killing restlessness, but by harnessing it. The very same qualities that seem disruptive, curiosity, urgency, questioning, agitation, become assets when applied with purpose. Restlessness is raw power, and focus is the art of channeling it. History is filled with restless individuals who changed the world, not because they silenced their minds, but because they gave them a mission. An innovator who could not accept the limitations of existing technology channeled their restlessness into invention. An artist dissatisfied with conventions turned agitation into creative masterpieces. A leader who could not settle for injustice transformed unease into movements that reshaped society. None of these people eliminated their restlessness, they redirected it. Focus is restlessness in alignment with meaning. The danger comes when restlessness is suppressed. Suppression turns energy inward, creating anxiety, frustration, and even despair. A person who believes they must silence their restless mind is like someone trying to hold back a river with their hands. Eventually, the water will either overflow destructively or dry up in wasted potential. Channeling, however, turns the river into a current that can power cities. The restless mind needs a purpose the way water needs a channel. It is not a force to be feared, but a resource to be managed. Focus is also not about narrowing life to a single rigid path. It is about choosing a direction and allowing restless energy to fuel the journey. A person with focus still feels restless. They still have questions, doubts, and bursts of urgency. The difference is that instead of scattering their energy across countless unfinished pursuits, they align it with a vision. Every restless thought becomes a building block, every burst of energy a step forward. What once felt overwhelming becomes momentum. What once felt like distraction becomes drive. Greatness requires this kind of focused restlessness. Without restlessness, there is no hunger for change. Without focus, there is no structure to turn hunger into results. It is the combination of the two that produces breakthroughs. Restlessness without focus is a storm, loud, chaotic, and fleeting. Focus without restlessness is calm but stagnant, safe, yet unremarkable. Together, they form a current strong enough to move not only an individual, but also the people and systems around them. The restless mind should not seek peace in the form of stillness, but in the form of purpose. It is in purpose that restlessness finds rest. It no longer needs to fight against itself because it has a channel through which to flow. When people learn this truth, they stop trying to cure their restlessness and instead begin to guide it. That is the moment restlessness becomes not a curse, but the very foundation of greatness. Restlessness is often mistaken for a need to stay busy. People who cannot sit still are told to fill their time with tasks, to keep themselves occupied, to drown their agitation in endless activity. But the restless mind cannot be fooled by motion alone. It does not crave business, it craves meaning. It is not satisfied with a checklist of trivial tasks or the appearance of productivity. What it truly seeks is significance, a purpose that gives weight to its energy, direction to its questions, and fulfillment to its efforts. Busy work offers temporary relief like pouring water into a sieve, keeps the hands occupied and distracts the mind for a moment, but the sense of dissatisfaction always returns. That dissatisfaction is not a flaw, it is a signal. It reveals that the mind is searching for something deeper, something that matters beyond the immediate. The restless mind does not simply want to do, it wants to contribute. It wants to know that its energy is being invested in something larger than itself, something that leaves a mark. Without that, all activity feels hollow. No matter how much of it there is, the world often rewards business over meaning. People are praised for being constantly active, for staying late at work, for juggling countless commitments. Yet many of these same people collapse at the end of the day feeling unfulfilled. The restless mind cannot accept this contradiction. It questions why so much energy is spent without a sense of progress. It resists the illusion that motion equals growth. For the restless, meaning is the only true measure of productivity. A single task with purpose outweighs 1,000 tasks performed for the sake of appearance. This craving for meaning is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the recognition that time is limited, that energy is finite, and that life should not be wasted on what does not matter. The restless mind understands, sometimes painfully, that settling for activity without significance is a kind of slow death. It would rather risk failure in pursuit of something meaningful than succeed at something empty. This is why restless individuals often feel out of place in environments where tradition is valued over innovation or where process is valued over impact. Their minds will not allow them to find peace in simply going through the motions. They must know that what they are building carries value. The key, then, is not to silence restlessness, but to direct it toward meaning. When the restless mind finds a cause worth fighting for, a vision worth pursuing, or a craft worth mastering, it transforms. Suddenly the energy that once felt like agitation becomes drive. The dissatisfaction that once felt like a burden becomes fuel. Work that would exhaust others becomes fulfilling because it is no longer just activity. It is aligned with significance. Restlessness given meaning turns into passion. Passion, given persistence, turns into impact, history is filled with examples of restless individuals who refused to be satisfied with activity alone. They were not interested in being busy for the sake of being busy. They wanted their efforts to count. They wanted to solve problems, to create beauty, to push boundaries. And because they demanded meaning, they gave us progress. Their restlessness would not let them settle, and that refusal became their contribution to the world. The restless mind is not a curse, but a compass pointing always toward significance. Its dissatisfaction with the trivial is what drives it toward the profound, ensuring that energy is not wasted on what fades, but invested in what endures. Every breakthrough begins with unease. Human history is not shaped by those who accepted the world exactly as it was, but by those who felt the discomfort of misalignment between what existed and what could be. Calm acceptance preserves the present, but it is restlessness, dissatisfaction, and discomfort that open the door to transformation. Unease is the soil in which possibility takes root. The greatest shifts in science, art, leadership, and society were not born from serenity, but from agitation. Minds that could not rest until change became reality. Unease is a signal that something is missing, something is wrong, or something is waiting to emerge. It is the inner tension that refuses to let us settle into complacency. For some, it comes as dissatisfaction with a job that feels meaningless. For others, it manifests as frustration with injustice, inefficiency, or mediocrity. Whatever form it takes, unease stirs the mind into action. It pushes people to question what others accept, to challenge what others protect, to imagine what others cannot see. Without unease, there is no reason to move beyond the status quo. With it, progress becomes inevitable. Consider the great innovators of the past. None of them were satisfied with the limitations of their time. They were restless, uneasy with the tools, systems, and ideas available to them. That unease compelled them to experiment, to risk failure, to endure ridicule. The discomfort of living with unanswered questions was greater than the discomfort of failing in pursuit of answers. Every scientific discovery, every technological leap, and every creative masterpiece was preceded by a period of tension, someone unable to quiet the voice inside that whispered, "Here must be a better way." That voice was unease, and it was the birthplace of progress. Unease also has a moral dimension. The greatest social shifts in history did not begin with widespread agreement, but with the discomfort of a few individuals unwilling to tolerate injustice. It was the unease of visionaries who could not accept inequality, exploitation, or oppression that ignited movements for change. Calm acceptance would have preserved systems of injustice forever. Unease cracked them open. It gave people the courage to speak, to resist, to organize. From abolition to civil rights to every struggle for freedom and dignity. The first spark was always discomfort, the refusal to settle for a world that denied possibility and humanity at an individual level. Unease acts as both a mirror and a compass. It shows us where we are not aligned with our values, our purpose, or our potential. That restless feeling we try to ignore or suppress is often the exact guide we need. Instead of asking how to silence unease, the better question is, what is it pointing to? Unease does not come to punish, it comes to awaken. It forces us to recognize that comfort zones are prisons, and the only way out is through change. The mind that refuses to settle becomes the mind that creates, builds, and transforms. Of course, unease is uncomfortable by definition. Most people run from it. They distract themselves, numb themselves, or convince themselves that settling is enough. But those who lean into unease discover its gift. They understand that tension is the birthplace of creativity. That discomfort is proof of growth. That restlessness is not a flaw but a force. Unease is not the end of peace. It is the beginning of progress. Every great leap forward, whether for an individual or for humanity, carries the same origin story. A restless soul, unwilling to accept what is, choosing instead to imagine and create what could be.